So in my most recent episode of the Pokemon Emerald LP, which is to say episode 15, I pointed out that I would eventually get around to reviewing Pokemon Channel. But whoops, the game gives me sod all to talk about. For all intents and purposes, it's just a spiritual successor to Hey You Pikachu, except that you watch TV. And for those of you who want to hear my in-depth analyses of Hey You Pikachu, here it is in full. The game where you talk to Pikachu. Everybody wants to talk to Pikachu. Now, while I could sit here and complain about these two games, it wouldn't really be fair because they aren't really games. Not by most people's definitions. They are virtual pets. Pikachu hangout simulators with all the depth of a Tamagotchi. I just think it's a load of balls that Pokemon Channel was the only available method for European and Australian players to acquire Jirachi in the main games. American players were way luckier in this regard. Their exclusive Jirachi came with the purchase of Pokemon Colosseum, a genuinely entertaining spin-off game which actually bears discussing, which is exactly what I intend to do.
You cannot steal our Pokemon!
Who will save the Pokemon? Gotta save them. Gotta save them all.
What could have just been a successor to Pokemon Stadium with improved graphics and Gen 3 functionality turned out to be way more than that. A genius sorority pulled out all the stops. Not only did Colosseum offer a fully fledged 3D adventure, but it shook up the Pokemon formula in such a fascinating way that it still stands out as one of my favourite games in the entire series. Colosseum was not about a 10-year-old's quest to travel across a region and catch a huge variety of Pokemon friends. Instead, it focused on Wes, a reformed criminal riding across a desolate wasteland with his Espeon and Umbreon, stealing and rehabilitating a bunch of corrupted Pokemon, all whilst toppling a criminal empire. As you can probably tell, this game is a slightly darker affair than usual. After saving a girl named Rui from an embarrassingly public kidnapping, you can make use of her innate ability to sense shadow Pokemon. Pokemon that have been tampered with to become soulless, violent killing machines. They can all use a unique move named Shadow Rush, which deals decent neutral damage with quite a bit of recoil. But this unique move doesn't quite make up for their inability to level up or evolve. By bonding with a shadow Pokemon, you can eventually bring back memories of their former lives, and fully purify them with the help of a magic stone, earning them all the EXP they were quietly racking up for one hell of a power level. This is beyond satisfying, but very time consuming if you want to purify all 48 of them. And that's keeping in mind that shadow Pokemon are used exclusively by enemy trainers, all of whom engage exclusively in double battles. So, while you try to catch all of the Shadow Mons, you are being attacked. It's a good thing that trainers don't kick off when you steal their prize fighters from under their noses, else this game would be borderline frustrating. Anyways, the bleak region this game takes place in, Ore, boasts two evil teams. Team Snag'em, who you had previously betrayed and left in a state of disarray, and Team Cypher, who are behind the spread of shadow Pokemon. Most of this game revolves around the latter. You complete in their titular Colosseums in order to learn about and eventually infiltrate their shady operations, which leads to you taking down their numerous admins. And, oh boy, these admins. They're, a colourful bunch, but they can be hard as balls and shouldn't be underestimated, especially when they start busting out shadow legendaries. Have fun catching Entei, Raikou and Suicune, all whilst taking on otherwise difficult boss fights. Difficulty spikes? What are those? So to get into spoiler territory, as if you guys are concerned about me spoiling an old Gamecube game during a retrospective review, It turns out that the big head honcho of Team Cypher isn't this Sephiroth-looking mofo who stalked you throughout the game, but instead turns out to be the lovable mayor.
Oh, and I would have gotten away with it too, if it weren't for you meddling.
I will feast on the souls of the innocent, bathing in a sea of blood.
So the mayor reveals himself to be a demon named Evis, which is never really explained, and instead of calling in an exorcist, you defeat him in a final Pokemon battle. After he goes down and fails to escape, he is finally apprehended and all is well. With that, you have beaten Pokemon Colosseum, and can transfer all of your purified Mons into the mainline Gen 3 games, in which most of them are otherwise unavailable. Or can you? Yes you can, but what I'm getting at is that Colosseum had a sequel.
Darkness has fallen over the land of Ore. Unravel the mystery of Shadow Lugia.
Developed once again by Genius Sorority, Pokemon Laughing Emoji was released 1 year after Colosseum and followed the story of Michael, the ugliest boy in town. Michael lives in a lab and takes it upon himself to fight against a reformed Team Cypher after they mess with his scientist friends. He does so with a shadow Pokemon tracker, his goofy looking scooter, and his trusty Eevee. Evidently not as much of a badass as Wes was, but with way more potential considering that at an early point in the game, you can evolve your Eevee into any of its 5 evolved forms. Want to sweep through most of the game with Jolteon? Go hog wild! For the most part, Pokemon LOL follows the same story beats as the first, even reusing a few locations, but as a direct sequel, it becomes clear that the world as a whole has a better understanding of what Shadow Pokemon are, and what can be done to help them. But determined to be the biggest a-holes possible, Cypher's big plan in this game is to create the ultimate Shadow Pokemon. A Shadow Lugia that is visibly recognisable and cannot be purified. Except that it totally can. So there are a bunch of tweaked mechanics in Pokemon ROFL that make it worth playing in and of itself. For one, the Shadow Pokemon can now learn a wide variety of new Shadow moves, all of which are super effective against regular Pokemon, but weak against other Shadow Pokemon. These moves include Shadow Blast, Blitz, Bolt, Break, Chill, Down, End, Fire, Half, Hold, Mist, Panic, Rave, Shed, Sky, Storm, and Wave. Quite a bit of variety. This makes Shadow Pokemon way more usable for the most part. Sure, they still can't level up and do require purification in the long run, but pragmatic players can now hold off on releasing these suffering monsters from their internal prisons. Until absolutely necessary, of course. This sequel boasts a relatively whopping 83 Shadow Pokemon to acquire, and 9 regular mons that can be caught in the wild. Once again, this includes a good few legendaries, the legendary birds in this case. But instead of them being shared among the admins, they all belong to the big bad guy running everything, who turns out to be none other than the lovable philanthropist. Sorry, Greevil, but y'all ain't a demon. What Greevil does have though, is a Shadow Lugia, which, after you effortlessly capture it with a Master Ball, you can use to take on his full team of 6 Shadow Pokemon, 3 of which being the incredibly hard to catch legendary bird trio. I hope you brought all the Pokeballs in the world, and all the healing items, because this might be the hardest final battle in any Pokemon game, if you're playing for 100% completion. Screw you, Greevil. So anyways, that is the Shadow Pokemon duology, a groundbreaking pair of games that really stood out when compared to the rest of the Pokemon series. The concept of hyper-violent Shadow Pokemon wasn't used again until the appearance of Shadow Mewtwo in Pokken Tournament for the Wii U, and frankly, I think they're an untapped well that could be used quite effectively in the mainline series. So next up we have the one-off games. They're pretty simple, so let's breeze through them.
Pokemon? Meet pinball.
First of all, you have Pokemon Pinball Ruby and Sapphire, a sequel to the original Pokemon Pinball that boasts 205 catchable Pokemon, along with prettier Game Boy Advance graphics. It sure is a pinball, and if you played it through your Gamecube, it even offered a rumble feature. Over on the DS, you had Pokemon Dash, a launch title which offered you a pretty bare bones experience if I'm honest. You swipe the screen to make Pikachu go. Innovation at its blandest. I'll stick with Mario 64 DS and WarioWare Touched, thank you very much.
Pokemon, Troze, move real fast now, don't go slow. Pokemon, Troze, 4 in a row, and you're good to go.
Another DS game, Pokemon Troze, was a puzzle game. Match 4 hits in a row to clear the mons, and don't get overwhelmed. Kind of like Pokemon Puzzle League this one, but with sliding instead of swapping. Cool, I guess.
僕の通信対戦がこれで変わる。頭負けか。調子のポケモン変えたよね。何か秘密があるの？
ゲームボーイアドバンスとゲームキューブ。つなげばポケモンの楽しさがさらに広がる。
Pokemon Box! This one isn't even a game, it's more like an app for the Gamecube, before apps were even a thing. Props to that guy in the advert for trying to make it sound exciting, but, you know, it stores your Pokemon. It's built for function, and function alone. No fun to be had. And it's only available in Japan. So, let's move on to the big two. Pokemon Ranger and Pokemon Mystery Dungeon, Red and Blue Rescue Team. These games turned out to be so popular and well received, they went on to become their own side series, which some people claim to enjoy even more than the mainline games. That is pretty impressive in and of itself, but this is where I must throw up my hands and call blind spots. I have never played Pokemon Ranger or any of its sequels.
Now you can capture Pokemon in a whole new way, then use their powers to complete exciting missions in Pokemon Ranger.
But fear not, my good friends
Wikipedia
definitely has, and here are their thoughts.
Pokemon Ranger is a role-playing game which is designed in a format radically different from that of traditional Pokemon RPGs. The player controls a ranger in the 4 region and catches Pokemon, temporarily, by using a device called a capture styler, which is controlled by the stylus. The player must loop the Pokemon a certain amount of times to capture them. Temporarily caught Pokemon can be used to accomplish tasks and solve puzzles by cutting, shooting fire, blowing water, etc. The storyline of the game is set out in 10 main missions with 3 sub-missions.
So that was Pokemon Ranger. I'll probably stream it one day, if you guys want me to. But personally, I'm just a little bit more invested in the Mystery Dungeon side series.
Whoa. Whoa! Come on! We got rescuing to do!
With a premise as enticing as become a Pokemon, the success of Mystery Dungeon Red and Blue was an inevitability. But the game really went out of its way to cultivate its identity, and it really does show. After completing a personality test, the game assigns you one of 16 playable Pokemon. I'm of the opinion that you should always be honest with this test to add a layer of authenticity to the experience, but that's just me. Once the game starts, you wake up in a world of talking Pokémon, having lost all memories of your former human self. You befriend an ally Pokémon who sticks with you for the rest of the game, and together you form a rescue team. A team that specialises in rescuing innocent Pokémon from randomly generated mystery dungeons, or escorting them, or finding their lost possessions, or hunting bounties. I might be overselling it, but you're kind of like Pokémon mercenaries. So the game consists mainly of dungeon exploration, which entails defeating enemies, finding exits in a timely fashion, and keeping your team fed and looked after. To be honest, it takes a surprising amount of management and doesn't take long to become slightly tedious. But thankfully, Mystery Dungeon's main appeal comes from its involving plots. Wordy as it can be, Mystery Dungeon comes up with some very interesting plot twists. At first, things seem simple. You get on with your work and you bump heads with a rival team. But after hearing an unfortunate prophecy about the world's end, which essentially blames you for the impending doom, you get run out by an adorable Pokémon lynch mob, and you're forced into a number of difficult battles with some pissed off legendaries. Goes without saying, but this is something of a tone shift. And from there, you are tasked with saving the world. Fun times! If I had to voice my main issue with these games, aside from their grindy nature, it would be both the pacing and the fact that you cannot evolve in them, not until the main campaign is beaten. And evolution has always been one of my favourite features in the Pokémon games, so that's quite a shame. But, to offset that criticism, these games boasted some cool Easter eggs, including references to some as of yet unavailable Generation 4 Pokémon. I'd recommend giving these games a try and seeing what you make of them, because they might be right up your alley. And with that, those are the Generation 3 spin-offs. Because for as fun as Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Fire Red and Leaf Green are, sometimes you need a refreshing break from your incredibly expansive RPG adventures. So thank you for watching everyone, and here's hoping you're enjoying the Emerald LP. The next episode will be out soon.